Hello there and welcome to my beginner tutorial for Godot 4. This is a beginner focused tutorial and by the end of this very simple one you'll have a very good understanding, an explanation of all of the features of Godot and how to add scripts and how to add objects and what the editor looks like. This is deliberately for beginners, so please put some headphones in and listen to this closely. There'll be a lot of explanation, but it'll put you in a good position to be a top quality game developer by the time you're finished this tutorial series. All right, so let's get started by running Godot and creating our brand new project. Now, this is one of the things that tripped me up when I first started. You've got a location. You can browse to anywhere you like. I've made a folder for myself, so called Godot 4 Project. It's where I put all my projects. The name that you give it here, so I'm going to call mine platform tutorial, and you still can't create this until you actually create a folder inside of this. So just by clicking this create folder, it makes a brand new blank folder, an empty folder called whatever your project name is inside of the location that you initially started. Now it's really important that it has to do that because it needs to create an awful lot of files in there. So it does need to be a blank, empty folder when it does that, so it doesn't overwrite some stuff. The other thing that you probably don't know much about is the different renderer types. Now, it's not really important right now. Either one will work, but the forward plus is more for the 3D graphics, and the compatibility renderer has like a fallback like the old one. So it really doesn't matter when you're learning which one you use, but I'm going to use the forward plus because it's the more advanced one, even though I'm only going to be doing some 2D stuff. So as soon as you've done that, just click create and edit, and then you should be faced with what Godot looks like, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. So once you're in here with Godot, you'll see that on the left-hand side is all the scenes. The actual scene hierarchy will be here. Down on this left-hand lower side is the file system tab, and this shows you all of the things that are in your project. This is literally just the folder that you've just made. So if I right-click on this and I say open in File Manager, it actually opens the folder that I just made. So it was in Documents, Godot 4 Projects, and it was Platform Tutorial. And you can see there's more than just the ones that you see here, but this is an important concept, because if you need to add things to your project, rather than have to go through the file system menus in here, you can actually just drag and drop things into here. So images, PNG, JPEGs, any images or sprites or anything can go into this project. Any folders that you have or that you create will be copied across, so you can organize things inside of this. And yeah, so all the assets that you need are going to be inside that project. So I'm going to close this for now and go over some of the rest of it. So the different views that you can have here. So your main central view here is where you can where the game world is. You can have a 2D one if we're making 2D games. This is what you'll mostly work on. There's also obviously 3D for the 3D games, and then scripts and the asset library as well. And this is a bunch of cool things that you should take a look through and see if you can use. However, we're going to keep it as simple as possible and not confuse ourselves with this. So I'm just going to click on this 2D here and I'll go through some of the tools that you can use to move around. So the middle mouse button allows you to kind of pan the view around and to scroll in and out. The screen size that you will be working with, so what you see is the blue line here, and the axis, the 0, 0 axis is just up on this left-hand side. So obviously it goes positive this way and positive that way, so down is positive. The there are the move tools. So if you have things that are on your scene, you can move them, rotate them, and scale them up here. And there's also the grid that you can switch on and off. So you can have snapping, so that things snap to certain points. You can control that with this area here, and we might use that a bit later on. So there's a few tools that we're going to maybe look at as we start needing them. So Godot works with hierarchies of scenes. So right now I'm in the 2D view, and I want you to do this too. We're going to add a new 2D scene to this, and immediately you'll see that we have a new node called node 2D. It's a really, really good idea to, as soon as you make it, to click on it again to rename it. So I'm going to call this one game, because this is going to be my top level node. All other parts of my game are going to be children of this top level node. As soon as I've named it or renamed it, you'll see up here that it's a tab. My scene, this scene is a tab, and I want this to be saved with a correct name. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to click scene and then save scene. You notice it's put me in this res, which is the same folder as we see here, and it's given it the same name as the node that I want to save. So I'm going to call this game for now and click save, and we go straight to that. So you'll see now that there is a game.tscn scene file right here. Now, if your scene file happens to be closed, and you need to get back to it, you can double click it and it'll open it up. You can have multiple tabs open here with lots of different scenes for your project. And that's an important concept, because often there are scenes inside of scenes, and we'll do that when we create our player in the next few minutes. So we're trying to get something on this game so we can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click to add. You can hit the plus up here, which adds a child node of the selected node, or you can right click on a specific node to add children nodes. So I'm going to add my main player. So I'm going to click add child node, and I'm going to create the character controller for my player. So this character body 2D is the thing about Godot is there's probably a node for everything. So if you need specific things, you can often search them, and I'll show you a little bit how to get the help as well. So this character body 2D, when you hover over it, it says it's a 2D physics body specialized for character movement by script. That seems like exactly the type of thing that I would need to control a character by script. So I'm going to click to select this one and click create. I don't have to leave it as this name, so it is a really good idea to keep renaming them every single time. So this is going to be my player. It's going to be my top level player anyway. So I've renamed this to player, and then you'll see that there's a little exclamation mark. The exclamation mark, you just hover over it and it gives you the reason why it is an exclamation mark. So it says that it has no shape. It also doesn't have a sprite, so I can't see it. So you can't see anything right now, even though it is in the center of my world over here. So I'm just going to right click on that, and I'm going to add both those things. So I'm going to add the sprite first so that I can see it. So if you type in sprite in the search box and choose sprite 2D, because obviously we're in 2D, this sprite 2D, if we look at it, I don't necessarily need to change this name right now, because the top level player is going to be in charge of all of this. But the sprite 2D, if we look over on its properties over here, you'll see that you are missing a texture. It says empty. The way you get the texture on is you can do 2 or 3 ways. You can quick load or load, and that will load anything that's already inside of your project. Now I only have one thing. I only have icon.svg, so I could select this and open it. You can also simply drag and drop anything from your resources into your sprite, into the texture, and as long as it's a texture, it will drop in no problem. So it does give you that option to choose. You can remove it from here as well. You can just clear it off, and if you get it wrong, and just try again. Quick load is another way. Quick load just filters for things that it's allowed to add, and then gives you them as a single list, and that sometimes is a good way of doing it. So this is the default Godot sprite. Now you'll notice that the player, I just want to quickly cover some properties. So the player's transform is one of the many properties that you see when you select on the player. Now, because it's a character body 2D, it's got other things too. And one of the coolest things about Godot, before we even do anything, is that there's a ton of help already built in. So you shouldn't have to go on YouTube and you shouldn't have to go on Google, because you should really use the documentation as the first place to go. So if I select my player, I can look at some of the properties and the documentation of this just by clicking on this doc button up on this top right. This gives me heaps of information, including tutorials if I need them, and all of the properties and all of the methods that you can do on this. So this really should be your go-to location for finding out help. You shouldn't just Google it and hope that you'll find someone, let someone give you the answer. It's a really good idea to use this documentation to find the answer yourself. To go back from this, because I'm on this character body 2D, I just click back on this, the 2D view over here, and I can get back to the view of my scene. So we still haven't fixed the problem of the no collision shape, so I'm just going to do that as well. So I'm going to right click, add a child node, and I'm just going to start typing in collision shape. I'm going to add this collision shape 2D node. And again, we have another exclamation mark, but because it's Godot, it helps you out and it tells you what you need to do. So it says that a shape must be provided for collision shape 2D to function. So all you need to do is go across to the properties. Again, you'll see empty. Usually that's a sign that there's a problem. And so you can take this shape and you can choose the one that you want. So I'm going to select new rectangle shape 2D, and you'll see that it appears over here because it's selected. So I'm just going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in and use the middle mouse to get myself in the right position. Click the collision shape 2D and just drag these corners out so that it approximates the shape of my sprite. So one of the coolest features of Godot that is weirdly not in Unity 3D is the ability to group these nodes so that they don't become selectable. One of the mistakes you'll make is that you'll try and want to move the whole player, and what I'm doing when I click on it is I just select one of the items and then I select the other item. They're actually not in the middle. The player is still here. So if I click player and I look at the transform, you see it's still at position 0 and 0 on the X and the Y, but the sprite isn't. The sprite has a transform too, but it's been offset. So you want to make sure that you only move the player and don't move everything else. So before you've done anything else, I'm just going to Control Z these movements back. So we've got kind of what we want. Just move this back where I need it. And then I'm going to group it so that I don't accidentally move it, move the children objects of it without moving the top level. So I'm just going to click on player, and then over on the right hand side, the top center here where it says group selected nodes, you can click on this. You'll see a little icon appears next to player. Now, no matter if I want to select the children objects, I can directly select them in the hierarchy right here. But if I have nothing selected and I click on the player, it selects the top level group. So it doesn't accidentally move the children. So the actual player is being moved right now. So I'll move it to the middle of the screen, which is the blue, purpley kind of line here, and we'll preview our amazing game for the first time. So when you hit this play button, it will give you an error because it doesn't know which scene you want to have as your main scene. So hitting play right now, it'll say, what do you want to do? I don't know what the main scene is. So you can select current, which will allow you to automatically hit play. So doing that will set this as my main scene. I'm going to do that so that I can always hit play. And you'll see that the window pops up and we have the game playing. It's not very exciting, but it's a game and it's currently live and working at however many 60 frames a second, I believe it is, but not doing anything. So it's important that you don't just hide this and leave it running. If you have done that, you've hidden it, you'll see this thing up here and you can make changes and it doesn't really break, but it really is good practice to not leave the game running while you keep working on it. It can cause some issues, so don't pause it either. That's useful if you need to pause it because you need to debug something, but it's better to just stop it again, and then the window would have disappeared. So if I'll watch you that again. So if I do that and I just hit the stop, or I close the window, then we're back to being able to edit it again without any issues happening when we're trying to change things while the game's still running. So I want to make this game a little bit more exciting than we currently see. So I'm going to need some sort of interaction, and the way that interaction works inside of Godot is with scripts most of the time. So this player, we're going to put a script on the player. I'm going to probably want to organize the folders here so that I've got stuff. So just be aware this is your first tutorial, but it is important to be organized. And I know I'm going slow, but I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to say a folder. The folder name is going to be scripts, so that I can put all my scripts in there, and that will keep things organized so that I don't get all messed up. The script now, when we click on the player, you can add a script by hitting this little, I don't know what that is, a paper, like a scroll type thing up here, or you can right click and you can choose to attach a script to it. So I'm going to do the attach script. This this dialog that pops up is really useful. I'll quickly cover some of this. So the language is GDScript that we're going to be using. The character body 3D is the object that it inherits from. So this adds the functionality. The next thing is that the useful thing in Godot 4 now is that you get these options. So it knows that you're probably going to want some sort of basic movement. So it's given you this option for basic movement, so we don't need to do anything. And it's given it a name. Now it's going to put it in the default res because that's what I had selected over here. But if I want to move it, I can select where I want it to go, and I can change its name here. So I still want to keep it called player, and I'm going to click open, and then I'm going to click create to make it in the scripts folder. So I'm assuming that you've done some programming. I'm not going to cover a whole ton of this, but you should definitely try and familiarize yourself with how this works. You can take a little look through, and most of the language, because it's very Python-like, should be kind of understandable. The differences are things like var, in order to define that this is going to be a variable. And you can force a data type as well. So this is an integer data type, so it's going to be a number. These are constants, you can tell, because it's got the constant keyword. And so if we look at these values, this 300 and minus 400, using good variable names makes it so much more useful. So the movement speed of this character body is probably 300. So I imagine if I change this, it's probably going to make it faster or slower. And it's the same with the jump velocity. I can make this. Now remember that the jump velocity is a negative value because when you move down, that's going positive. So up is obviously negative. So this jump velocity. There's a few other things that I should probably point out. There's an input section here where we're checking for a key press. There's two keys. The UI accept is the by default is the space bar, and the UI left is the left arrow, and the UI right is the right arrow. So if you see that these basically get the axis and then move the velocity, and then it uses a move and slide. Now the coolest thing, one of the coolest things of Godot is the ability to jump around inside of this for help. So holding Control down on your keyboard and clicking on anything that you're not sure about will take you to the documentation for that particular function, and you can read up more about it. And often you can have somewhere in the script we're back at the character body 2D where we can see the tutorials again. So you can go back to the script just by the tab here. So you can click back to the script and say you didn't know what the input class was, you could go and click on that, and there's online tutorials, and there's further help, and there's all the different functions. So R1, if I go back here, is action just pressed. I can control click on that, and I can read more about what that does. It is codey language, but it's brilliant to have the help all built in and just at your fingertips, so you can quickly check what something is. And it's really, really useful for learning to use this whole engine so that you can get out of it what you need. So we want to just see what this does. So we have a rough idea of what it does. The physics process happens every frame, and it moves in slides based on some calculations from input, which is kind of sensible. That's basically it. We're going to need to come back to this and understand it more in a later tutorial. But if I hit play on this, it'll save everything up, and you'll see that the sprite, because it has the script on it, falls down based on some sort of gravity, which is calculated in here. If I'm using my arrow keys, I can also see that it moves right and left as I fall. So I know it works, but the issue is we've got nothing to stand on, so we're going to keep falling straight off the bottom of the screen. So let's fix that problem next. All right, so I don't want to make this a child of the player. Anytime you have objects that are children of other objects, they'll move as the other one moves. And if the player moves, so would the platforms if I put them on as a child of the platform. So I'm going to make sure that I select game and add a child node for that. Now, there's lots of different nodes that you can use for the platforms. I just want to do the simplest one that I can possibly do. So I'm just going to create a static body 2D. So the static body 2D is the like a physics body. So it's going to have sort of like reaction to other objects. So that's what I need for this character body 2D. This physics body 2D needs a collider as well. So if I add one, I'll go to 2D so we can see it. So on its own, it's the functionality, but it's not the actual what it looks like. So the static body 2D is just something that I can add stuff onto to add the functionality. So I can see it's here. I'll do what I did the last time. I'll add a child node of sprite so I can see it. And because I'm lazy, I'm just going to use exactly the same sprite. Just drag that on over here. And then I'm going to also use add the collision shape because it's complaining about it again. So I'll add the collision shape 2D. Again, it's complaining because I haven't chosen the shape. So over here to new rectangle shape, and then we can adjust this as we need. So I'm going to just do this in a terrible rough and ready way. So I'm just going to stretch out this sprite and move it over back into the middle. And then I'm going to use the handles on the collision shape to just create a very, very simple platform. We're going to make this so much better in the next video. But in this one, this will just work. So this static body 2D, I'm just going to call it platform for now. It doesn't need to have any scripts on it because it's got its behavior and it's just going to be a collider effectively. But I do need to group it up so I can move it without messing things up. So I made it in the middle of the world. And now that it's all grouped up, I can drag it down here. So we'll hit the play button and we should have the ability to move right and left and jump with spacebar. So we've nearly got a game and we've only been doing this for a short time. So one of the key concepts that Godot works on is the fact that scenes have scenes inside them. The player node right now, we could leave it and it'll work perfectly well. But I'm thinking ahead and I know that I'm going to want to have more than one level. And so it'd be great if I could make a prefab or a pre-built version of my player that I could just drag and drop onto any scene. So I'm going to show you how to do that very early on so that you make a habit of doing that. So it's up to you, but again, I'm going to create a brand new folder for myself and I'm going to call it prefabs. These prefabs folder is where I'm going to put things that I'm going to reuse. Right now, all I have is my player, but when I change my player, when I change the prefab, it would change across every single scene that I have that prefab on. So I'd only need to change it in one place. So that's a very useful and time-saving tip. So to turn this into into a prefab, into a reusable scene, we can just select it and then right click on it, and we can choose this save branch as scene. So I'll do this, and I do want you to do this too. So when we save this branch as scene, I'm going to put it in this prefabs folder, and it's going to be called player, and I'll hit save. You'll see that things changed, and we've got now the player here with this little clapperboard symbol icon next to it. That means that it's now its own scene. You can also see that inside the prefabs folder, this scene exists. So to have another player, it's as easy as dragging and dropping it straight onto any scene that you have open. And you'll see that it comes in just as its own scene, just like this. So I'll just delete that one because I don't really need it. Now, you notice when I dragged this one in that it was kind of off center. And that's because when I made the player and I turned it into a prefab, it was actually at this position here, away from the center of the game. So we can fix that, and just delete this node. We're going to delete this player from the scene so that we can go and open up the prefab one. So this prefab is where you would kind of like, it's its own scene tab where you'd pre-make the player node so that it's the same across all of the scenes that has it in it. So just want to move this back. So I could drag it, I could eyeball it, or I could go over to transform here and just type the values in. So I'm going to put it into the center of the world like this. If I make any further changes, like for example, changing the sprite or the collision shape or anything, adding animations or an animated sprite, and I do it inside a player, it'll be updated across any scene that has it. So this game scene, which is my level 1 scene, I can drag this on. So I'm going to drag player on and just drop it in where I want it. Now everything should behave exactly as before, but this player now is a separate scene, and so I don't want to muck around with it unless I'm mucking around with the top level one, so that it's always going to be the way that it is consistently across all the levels. So everything still behaves exactly as before, but we've now got a hierarchy and we've got our player scene, so we can reuse that later on in other levels.